and the conservation lab he swore was sealed. The calendar square arrived at 6:02 p.m., crisp as a gallery label. Patrons dinner, East Pavilion, late. 2 minutes later, Ezra texted, "Don't wait up." Collections asked me to peek at the humidity controls in conservation after speeches. Proud of me. Read he spends the heart when the rest of the sentence wants diplomatic immunity. I turned the risotto down to the kind of simmer that calls itself maturity and looked across the park at the museum. At dusk, the facade turns both honest and theatrical, columns posing for the past while light spills like it means well. The square on my phone pulsed once and then behaved. I rinsed an already clean spoon because sometimes the only honest verb available is unnecessary. At 6:24, my phone buzzed with a number I didn't recognize and a message that recognized me anyway. If dinner, in East, why did he just badge the freight to the conservation lab? Staff door by the loading dock. Reader hates witnesses. Cover it with your palm, then pull. I can stall the sweep 2 minutes. Signed with a single letter T, as if the alphabet had leaned against a dolly and promised not to roll. Tomas runs nights in facilities with the steadiness of a climate graph that refuses drama. He and Ezra trade competence in a dialect of alarms and donors. He and I have shared 2 cigarettes beside the boiler that pretends to be a dragon, and one sharp laugh when a motion sensor tried to learn humor. We have not touched. I remember not touching more clearly than most men remember vows. "Why tell me?" I wrote. "Because your calendar is polite and my badge logs aren't," came back. Because he looked up before he swiped. People only look up there when they want oxygen. Because sealed is keep out the way champagne is hydration. The dock guard glanced at my reflection in the glass and decided I wasn't an emergency. I palmed the reader's red eye and pulled. The lock remembered its manners. The freight elevator groaned the way old machines flirt. It carried me down into a quiet that smelled like cotton gloves and patience. Through the pass-through window I saw stainless tables, magnifying lamps like moons, a cradle for paintings that had survived worse than our appetites. Ezra stood by the fume hood, jacket off, shirt open one button past credible, tie folded into his pocket with a competence he sometimes misplaces. Opposite him, resting 2 fingers on a steel table as if provenance were something that consented to be purchased, was Adrian Vale, developer, board vice chair, a roomer with a vault. Adrian's hand hovered near Ezra's wrist without landing, because proximity photographs better than contact when your brand buys history and invoices discretion. "Sealed looks social," I said from the doorway. Ezra turned. For a beat the truth used his face like an unvarnished panel, then the version of him that believed in dinners and promises returned from wardrobe. "Rowan," he said. How did?" "Tomas likes nouns," I said. "I like doors." Adrian smiled in the tone of men who believe their names appear in footnotes to years they didn't live through. "We were discussing stabilization," he said. "Donors enjoy seeing the future behave." "I prefer behavior that doesn't require a photographer," I said. Ezra took 1 step toward me and let the floor take the second. "We were checking the new environmental system," he said. He wanted to hear the fans without the gallery noise. "Sound is persuasive," Adrian said. He raised both hands like tasteful parentheses. 2 minutes. The sweep is punctual, I try to be." He drifted toward a storage cabinet of solvent bottles, paused to admire his reflection in the glass as if it might sign for him, and moved on. As he passed, 2 fingers touched Ezra's shoulder. Punctuation, not possession. The exhaust hood hummed the key of ulterior motives. Ezra watched me the way men watch weather when they hope it will finally choose a side. "I was going to text you," he said, lower now. using the register he keeps for mornings and the soft under my jaw. After, I wanted to know I could leave this room without it defining me. You wanted to be caught, I said, not punished, caught. He breathed once, the kind of breath that changes microclimates. Yes. There is a temperature at which grammar resigns. I crossed the lab and put my mouth on his because steel and glass deserve one honest thing a day. He kissed back with the relief of a man who has been paying interest on restraint, compounding nightly. He tasted like Gala bourbon and eucalyptus soap the museum buys in bulk. My thumb found the hinge of his jaw and pressed. He made the small, involuntary sound I keep receipts for. His palm slid under my shirt and settled flat between my shoulder blades like a promise that refuses notarization. We didn't undress. The cameras over the loading hatch like to imagine their curators. The fans prefer to supervise. He broke the kiss first because he knows the exact second heat applies for narrative. He rested his forehead against mine. A data logger beeped as if it, too, wanted this to be the story of the room. I didn't kiss him, he said. I wanted to want to. I texted Tomas. You did, I said. He prefers oxygen to salvage. From the cabinet row, Adrian tilted his head with the tidy curiosity of men who mistake patience for permission. He didn't come closer. The lab kept its judgment neutral. Come home, Ezra said. After I thanked the person who listens to fans, I said. Tomas waited in the corridor with his lanyard looped around 2 fingers and the stillness that convinces machines to behave. He didn't smile. He also didn't make mercy expensive. Sweep hits conservation in 90, he said. If you don't want to explain yourselves to a flashlight that recognizes shoes, take the print vault corridor, cut through framing, and exit by the sculpture yard. The yard cam believes every crate is a crate. You sent the message, I said. I opened a door, he said. You two remembered how to walk. The print vault smelled like paper that had survived hunger. Framing was a polite blizzard of sawdust and purpose. In the sculpture yard, bronze torsos practiced disdain for weather. We chose the street over the lobby. Sidewalks don't invoice. In the kitchen, the risotto forgave me for pretending timing is character. We ate standing, like mammals who know where the bowls live. He told me Adrian had been sculpting a compliment into a proposition for 3 weeks, and he had helped because selection feels like love when usefulness empties your pockets. I told him Tomas had texted because some men choose air over alibi. He didn't ask whether Tomas and I had ever been colossally stupid together. I didn't say how the red glow of a boiler gauge turns Tomas's mouth into punctuation that makes sense in emergencies. We didn't fight. There was no theater left to sell. Later, in bed, we left a sliver of cool like a reservation and then let it surrender because the night had already billed us for restraint. He kissed me with the steadiness I trust more than policy. I put my mouth where his jaw goes humble and told it a morning. It was heat without spectacle. The building minded its radiators. Across the park, the museum practiced forgetting names and we encouraged it. Morning behaved. Coffee made its case. The calendar square for tonight stayed blank, which in this town is the kink we can afford. Ezra tied a tie over a throat I intend to retire with patience and kissed me like the door already knew our names. He left to explain stability to people who think artifacts are obliged to be grateful. At 9:11 a text arrived from a number saved under 1 letter. No lab cam saw anything but ducting. I looped a filter check for 20. Consider it training. I sent, you're very proud of your training. He replied, I'm proud of your exit. No punctuation correct. By noon, a culture page posted a photo of Adrian holding a champagne flute beneath a banner that said preservation is progress like it had met either. I scrolled past. It wasn't our room. At 1:26, Ezra texted a picture of our kitchen table with the plant we keep refusing to let die basking in a responsible rectangle of sun. Room exists, he wrote. The week put on white gloves and pretended to behave. Adrian sent a revised pledge with fewer adjectives and more commas. Ezra read to the part where the commas began to behave like a harness and set it face down. He pressed his forehead to my temple for a quiet count of 7. We let the air resume its job. 2 nights later, the museum hosted Night in the Galleries. Honest tickets, real families, kids learning the difference between looking and touching in the language of a guard who enjoys their work. We went together, because sometimes the correct grammar is plural. Tomas nodded once from behind a cart of filters like an usher who had already chosen a side. Adrian shook Ezra's hand while a photographer taught marble to glow. A reporter asked about legacy. Ezra pointed to a volunteer kneeling to show a child the seam where a frame had been mended and said, "Legacy is what keeps rooms gentle." And the reporter wrote it down like she'd earned a truth. On the way home, we cut through the park where the path rehearses reflection with the pond. Ezra slid 2 fingers into my back pocket in the way that says not mine but here, and the night decided to respect it. We oversalted dinner and ate it anyway. At the bedroom door, he kissed me the way good sentences land, without ornament, unavoidable. I answered as if verbs were the last honest currency. It did not stay tidy. It never does here. An anonymous account posted a grainy still of 2 silhouettes in the reflection of a steel cabinet, one hand too near to be polite. The caption invented entanglement. The comments rented outrage and billed per breath. I put my phone face down beside the plant and watched the plant win. Ezra texted back a different image. The lab at noon, a conservator leveling a panel while Tomas checked a graph with reverent boredom. "Our version works for a living," he wrote. Sunday arrived with rain that sounded like careful applause. Tomas texted, "Basement's quiet. Want a chair where nobody sells you a seat?" We went. He poured us paper cups of coffee that tasted like competence and showed us which gaskets lie first, why you never trust a latch that apologizes, and the faint change in pitch that means a fan is about to tell the truth. He didn't flirt with anything, not even the truth. He stood with his hands in his jacket pockets and told us a joke about rich men who think patina is a personality. I liked him better for refusing to be necessary when he didn't need to be. The following week, a press event announced the museum's new conservation fellowship. Ezra spoke first, about bolts and volunteers and the joy of maintenance, the only speech that ages correctly. Adrian promised to let the city meet its past on time, a sentence that managed to spend nothing and still collect applause. After, he shook Ezra's hand and then looked at me with the careful respect of a man evaluating whether he cannot purchase. "You're both very good at exits," he said. "Practice," I said. He laughed because it was the only honest thing left on his card. A columnist with a talent for adjectives implied Ezra's access came courtesy of Private Tour. The piece included a photo of ducks that could have been any ducks and a paragraph that could have been any rumor. The comments did their choreography. I took the plant to the sink and let water speak to its roots like a promise we could keep. That night, we turned our phones face down and cooked like people who still believe heat tells the truth. Midweek, weather moved through like a courier, fast and insistent. On a wet Thursday, Tomas texted a single word, "weather," and we met him by the air intake where the gutter negotiated with the downpour. He showed us which drain floods first, where to stand when lightning interrogates stone, and how to hear the little swallow a damper makes before it betrays you. He didn't ask about the photo. We didn't say his name out loud. 3 people wide beneath a corrugated breath. We let the storm remove adjectives we didn't need. Life kept not being simple. Adrian kept sending commas that wanted homes. Ezra kept returning them with better ones. The plant kept inventing a new shade of green that made vanity look domestic. We kept our calendar squares blank on purpose, because blanks are the only promises rooms respect. Sometimes, near midnight, we pass the museum and look at the conservation wing's dim windows. From the street you can't see the lab, only a pale glow that pretends to belong to nobody. That's as it should be. We circle the block and go home without letting the building perform at us. He takes my wrist like a man reteaching himself the grammar of doors. I think about the lab and the 2 minutes that were enough, about how some rooms try to own you and others teach you to leave correctly. Sometimes I think about Adrian paused among solvents like a man who wants to buy air and discovering it doesn't invoice. Sometimes I think about Tomas's line, "I opened a door," and how it's the only biography I want for this version of us. Tonight's square is empty. We're leaving it that way. Let the museum keep its speeches and the city its applause. We have the sculpture gate, a plant we refuse to let die, and the quiet grammar of a decision that knows where it belongs. Not in the rumor, not in the photo, but in the mouth that learned to say come home and mean it. If we get caught again, let it be by each other. The rest of the world can rehearse preservation. We'll be in the room that doesn't need it, counting breaths until they sound like a fan that has decided to be kind, and calling that enough.